We are now broadcasting, everybody. I'll do a more formal welcome in a few minutes while everybody's getting in to the webinar. Look at our panelists who are so excited. Oh, I was like, where's Zenovia? I don't see her, but now I see you.
I don't know why. I thought it like cut my video off and I was like, oh, I don't know. I did that last time.
Hi, Erika.
Hey.
Quick question to our session administrator. Are we on Facebook already?
I'm pressing the button right now.
Sounds good.
Oh, it was an error. Hold on, give me 1 second, please.
Hola, Eli. Welcome, welcome.
Hi, I'm one of the interpreters.
Can you say your name?
My name is Dina. Oh
Great.
yeah, sorry, I'm coming up with.
That's
sorry,
okay.
That's my work, whatever.
That's okay. Thank you so much for joining us.
Is there another interpreter here?
There sure is.
Who? Where?
Yeah, there's two.
Yes, I'm Joel. Hello,
Hi, Tina.
Tina.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. So,
Okay. Let me just fix
what?
my everybody.
15.
And then we're going to
Wait.
I'm having difficulty putting the BA in for a second. Give me 1 second, people, please. About 2 minutes. Thank you.
Sounds good.
Do you mind if I work out some logistics with the other interpreter for a moment?
Please.
Cool. So would you like to do 15s? Does that work for you?
Yeah, just do it exactly 15:15. That's perfect.
Yep.
Do we have deaf people present? Like, do I need to pin someone or don't know?
No, we'll only be able to see the panelists. That's all. The participants we can't see.
So will you and I be on there together?
The
Will it be
way
like
that we've
panelists
set
and-
it up, the way
Okay.
that we've set it up in the past is the off interpreter turns off their camera until it's time to switch.
Okay.
If you're comfortable with that.
I'm fine, but so it will be the panelist and the interpreter, and that's the only thing. That's the only thing that people will see.
I believe that's correct. Is that correct, Stephanie?
That's fine.
Yeah.
So the off interpreter will be keeping time.
Yes.
The camera will go on. You'll see it. Okay. I think we're
Yeah,
good.
and then we'll go switch interpreter and we'll switch and
Perfect.
okay. And if I am like way off and need to be pulled back, you can turn your cam on and say,
Yeah, same. Same.
okay. All
Yeah,
right,
sounds
cool. I'm gonna go ahead and mute. Do you want me to start?
Yeah, go ahead and start. I'll turn my camera off.
Okay, cool.
So
Thank
to
you so much.
panelists,
Thanks for allowing us to set up.
Of course.
To panelists and attendees, I want to apologize. For some reason, we're having technical difficulty with Facebook. So what we're going to do is we're recording this. We're recording this. So give us another minute or so. We're recording this, but we're also going to try to make sure it goes to Facebook Live, as that was our intention. Again, you know, technology educators, you know, sometimes it loves us, sometimes not so much. But a few more minutes. Thank you.
Not a problem. Thank you, Torian. Just saying hi, everybody, again.
Hi, welcome everyone.
Hey. Who's doggy?
Oh, is that my dog? Is he that loud? Oh no, I didn't think you could hear him.
That's okay.
I'll text my dad.
I just want to thank all of those who are joining us for your patience so that we can get the Facebook Live feed up and running. We want to make sure everybody's on the same page and nobody's behind in terms of the content that we're sharing with you today. So thank you so much for your patience. Appreciate you. Hi, Claude. Claude, one of my favorite colleagues in the whole world. Every time he's been here, all 4 sessions. That's a real homie.
I feel like we should have had some music playing, or
Get some music going.
no, you don't have to.
Okay, well, now you're going to put me onto it. So you can give me the idea.
Some Celia Cruz.
Okay, I can take requests. We'll do, let's see.
This year, we had a play about Celia Cruz at Mount View, and so we were learning about her in the classroom, and then we had a little dance party to her songs, and the kids loved to dance to Celia Cruz in the classroom.
It
Do
was
you
so
want a
fun.
song, like a specific song request? Okay, Azúcar, we already got one in the chat.
There you go, Erica.
Okay. Hold on. Tell me if you can hear this.
Soy dulce como el melao, alegre como el tambor. Llevo el rítmico tumbao de África en el corazón. Hija de una isla rica, esclava de una sonrisa, soy calle y soy carnaval. Ponga corazón mi tierra, mi sangre es azúcar negra, es amor y es música. Azúcar negra. Ay, cuando
Okay, as much as we love Celia Cruz, I am getting word that we are going to just go ahead and start because it seems that we're having some trouble getting our Facebook Live going, but it's a recorded session, and so it will be posted later to the Facebook page, and it's also going to be posted on the WEA website. So we're just gonna get started. We're gonna roll with it. And I guess I should introduce myself. Some of you don't know who I am. My name is Stephanie Gallardo Lara. I'm an NEA director for the state of Washington. I serve you all in Washington, D.C., as well as on the WEA board here in Washington State. And I'm a high school teacher in Tequila. I teach social studies and ELL. And I love what I do. It's also hella hard. So before we continue on with what we're planning to discuss today, we need to do our land acknowledgement. And so I'm going to share with you all a video that one of our NEA director-elects created for us. Her name is Stephanie Irvin. She comes from Spokane. And I'm going to share my screen with you all so that you can see. Tori, can you go ahead and allow me to share screen, please?
Done.
Got it. Thank you. Here we go. Hold on, I have to fix my...
Ever since colonizers have reached our shore,
White Hustle Help Piaya, Insha Isqui Smatla. Hello everyone, good day. My name is Stephanie Irvin. Ever since colonizers have reached our shores, there has been a documented history of alliances formed between Black and Indigenous people. There have been countless lives lost over the fear of these alliances formed between Black and Native lives. We must continue to form these alliances. We must continue to have bold conversations. We must continue to lead and to form a path for people to follow so that we together can uplift our children and our grandchildren. Right now, I would like to take a minute to recognize the unrecognized, the federally unrecognized tribes that dwell within the areas of Seattle, through the Sound, and below the Sound. The Chinook, Duwamish, Kailis, Marietta Band of the Nooksack tribe, Snohomish, Snoqualmie tribe. Those are the tribes who are still fighting for their recognition. Now, the Klickitat of the Vancouver area, as well as the other 23 tribes who dwell around the Puget Sound area, and as well as the people who came in to trade and to celebrate and to fish and to swim and to enjoy those lands with the hosts of the Puget Sound. Thank you for taking this moment with me to recognize those who dwelled on this land before us so that we can be here together today, right now. I am Stephanie Irvin of the Arrow Lakes San Poyo Band of the Spokane, Coeur d'Alene, and Kalispell. And I thank you for listening and honoring these people with me. Liam Lund. Okay, we just want to thank Stephanie for contributing this amazing land acknowledgement video. We're so grateful and we're so excited to welcome her onto the NEA Board of Directors. So just to give a little bit of background for folks who are joining us for the first time. This happened last time, I'm so sorry. I never know how to close out of my screen. Hold on. Okay. So to give you background, we started constructing, crafting these sessions together with the other 14 panelists just about maybe a month and a half ago, maybe a little bit longer. And it resulted because of just the intense nature of the time that we were living in, and also like the deep turmoil that many of us, especially our Black panelists, have been experiencing as a result of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor's deaths and the years-long Black Lives Matter movement. And so we basically just thought that it would be a good idea and something that could bring a healing process and also a process of learning for a lot of our members to have this type of session, these types of sessions, especially so that we could get early career educators in on the movement, right? And part of why we decided to do these sessions was also so that we could put BIPOC educators, women and non-binary educators at the center and forefront of the conversations, because that's what the work is right now in WEA, is trying to uplift and center those voices, because for so long in WEA, they have not been positioned in the place where they should be as a result of many different things, such as barriers, the racism, and we could go into like a long slew. But now we're at a place, we're at a point in our situation as a union that we are moving forward, and honestly, we are claiming the power that we have and deserve, and we're doing what we got to do. So that's that, and that's why we're doing the sessions. And I just want to thank the panelists for being here today. Zenovia is here for the second time. So I'm going to ask her to introduce herself first, and then we can have each of the panelists introduce themselves. So go ahead, Zenovia, take it away.
Thank you, Estefa. My name is Zenovia Clark. I am a second grade teacher at a dual language school in the Highline School District, so south of Seattle. This is my 6th year teaching, which is really weird because that means I'm no longer an early career educator, like I'm moving away. And it's very exciting because that means I broke that statistic and I did not leave as an educator of color, although it's touch and go like every day. It's really hard. I also sit on the WEA Board of Directors, as well as the Highline Exec Committee and the Rainier Uniserve Council Directors. Gosh, what else? I got a dog, I love him. I got a wife, and I like snacks. Okay, someone else.
Let's go with Emma.
I can go, yeah. My name's Emma Caro, she, her, hers. I just finished my 1st year teaching, which wasn't a whole year, but we did it. I'm also working in Highline School District dual language teaching on the Spanish side for 2nd grade alongside Zenovia. We're on the same grade level team. I am in the elementary literacy adoption committee. I have also just joined the AGA rep for the building along with Zenovia and our friend Amelia. I like to read. I like to go to the beach and be in the water. I love summer, so I'm so glad that it's finally sunny. And I'm so thankful for everybody showing up here and whoever helped create this as well.
Thank you, Emma.
Hi, I'm Kaitlin Kamalei Brandon. You can call me Kaitlin or Kamalei. Kamalei is my Hawaiian name, so I can go by either or. I was a grades 2-3 ELA and ethnic studies teacher at Leshai Elementary in Seattle School District. I'm moving back down to my little ones, which is my favorite place to be, and teaching either kindergarten or 1st grade next year. It is my 3rd year teaching, which is really exciting. I also serve on the WA board with Zenovia and Estefa. I serve on the Seattle Education Association board as well. And then I've served as interim director, interim program manager, and a racial equity coach for the Center for Racial Equity in Seattle. Just a little something.
Thank you so much to our 3 panelists. Welcome. Woo. So so we're gonna get into some of our questions that we have for the panelists. The first one I kind of want to start with is just the concept, or I guess it's a misconception, that elementary school is not a place where justice or resistance work can happen. And I think back to my experience when I was in my teacher ed program, and one of the main reasons that I chose to do a secondary pathway was because I had this preconceived notion that elementary teachers could not do real deep resistance work with young people or with the little ones. And so that's kind of why I chose the path that I chose. Obviously now, some years later, I realize that that is a bunch of BS and that's not true. But I guess we'll just start with, what was y'all's elementary school experience like, and kind of how did you arrive at where you are today as elementary school teachers?
I'll start unless anybody else wants to jump in front of me. I was born and raised in Spokane, so I'm actually from the east side of the state, which is really nice teaching on the west side. And when I come together with Union folks, because I get to bring both perspectives of being born and raised on the east side and then now having been an educator on the west side of the state. For me, all of my K-12 experience was a predominantly white experience. I was the only Black friend in like my circle of friend groups. Like I was the only Black person, at least in my close group. I didn't have my first educator of color or Black educator until I was a sophomore in college. So I had never experienced having a teacher of color throughout that time. And although I had really wonderful, strong advocates for my education that were really supportive, They didn't look like me. They didn't have similar characteristics to my culture. And I always felt just left out, like not the same. And I always felt kind of out of place and almost like the elephant in the room, for a lack of a better term. And so I really got into elementary education, one, because they're cute, and two, because I really feel that I had my funnest years in elementary school, and those teachers really fought hard for me to make sure that I went on and felt empowered and loved. And I really wanted to do that for students. And I also wanted to be an educator of color for my students. So I really thought, if they get that at elementary school, that's great. Then they don't have to wait like I did until they were in college and was like, what? There's brown teachers out there? Y'all exist? I just thought, I don't know where y'all were. I thought maybe you were gone. So for me, I really just wanted to be who I needed when I was in elementary school.
Thank you, Zenovia. I think a lot of us who come into education feel that way. I was born in Mexico and came to the United States when I was very young. So I grew up in the United States, but I only lived with my mother, who spoke Spanish. And so going into the school system, I only spoke Spanish. And luckily I did live in California, where there were Latino teachers and they spoke Spanish, but it was an official dual language program. And so they were able to help me. And I remember there was one specific first grade teacher that read with me before school, and the way that he made learning was so engaging and fun, and the way he made me feel of believing in myself. And I think that's really why I became a teacher, to help students remember that they have a lot of light inside of them and they can shine very, very bright.
Yeah, thank you too for sharing. I feel like I saw some mirrors and then also some windows too. I was born on the Big Island of Hawaii, and that's where I attended kindergarten. And then my parents uprooted us and moved us to the mainland because there's just more opportunities in education, because they just couldn't afford for us to go to private school, which were kind of the only like really rigorous schools on the Big Island. And so when I came to the mainland, I spent a couple of years in California. I loved California. I was so happy. I saw so many people that like looked like me and like had beautiful tan skin like me. And then we shot up to Washington and all of a sudden I didn't. And so I started third grade in Covington, Washington. And I had amazing teachers, but you know, race and culture was never talked about. Like I remember like one diversity poster up on my fourth grade teacher's wall that was like an acronym, and that was it. And it was up there and we never talked about it, at least from what I can remember. And so I got teased a lot. I got teased for my skin color. Anytime I told them my Hawaiian name, they would mispronounce it. They would say, you should just go by Camille. Camille's prettier anyways. And I used to get teased for any kind of stereotype about Hawaii and Hawaiian culture. And so at a really early age, I learned to push away my culture and push away that part of me. Like I remember avoiding the sun so that I would stay paler. I remember like foregoing my middle name at all, not telling people I was from Hawaii or telling it in kind of a small way. And that carried on into like high school and middle school. And I had like really amazing teachers. And I hope some of them are watching because some of them are still WEA members. They just didn't have the resources necessary, I feel like, to have these conversations. And I did have all white educators in elementary school. And so they also didn't have the lived experiences to really help me through this. And so going into education, that is what I wanted to bring, where those resources and that power and that just that care for students, so that they can open up and never. And I tell my students this story sometimes of my time on the mainland in Covington, Washington, in elementary school, and because I want them to feel okay to share those experiences so we can dismantle those horrible, awful experiences and really empower them to never have to go through that again and never have to feel the way I did on the mainland.
Thank you all. So, you know, I'm noticing that all of you are saying that your elementary experiences were not what we would envision for our own students today. And that you didn't have educators of color, or at least did not have many educators of color, and that you basically did not feel like you had a home in your elementary schools, which is what I know you all try to make for your students in your classrooms. Part of this, I think, comes from our teacher ed programs, right? I personally went to Western Washington University, and I think Emma did too, is that right? Yep. So I'm not going to talk too much about Western because I know Emma's probably has stuff to say, but I just want to ask you all, you know, to speak on your teacher ed programs, and to speak honestly and truthfully. Some of us had real good experiences, and some of us had really, really, really challenging experiences. And I guess just let us know how those experiences led you to being the teacher you are today, or how it impacted you.
I can go ahead and talk about, so I went to Western Washington University in Bellingham, Woodring College of Education, and it's known to produce a lot of teachers. And I just want to say I am thankful for the mentors that I did find there, because it's not what they write down in their mission and their statements, but my mentors really helped me find the strength to keep going and to find the resources, and to, I think community is also what I found at Western, regardless of the program or not. But the program itself was very white, and I felt like the equity that was said to have happened wasn't happening. And it's always the people of color running initiatives to get committees going. And then it felt like when we were in committees, we were just having meetings about things, but there was definitely lack of action. But I would say I'm most thankful for the mentors.
But call out your mentors. Who are your mentors, Emma?
Veronica Velez, Kristen French. I'm like spazzing out, but there's just so many more, specifically women of color. Annalise, Jessica Stone.
You're making her nervous.
I know, I'm like, I had to pick for the list. I just know that there's a huge community of powerful women of color that are still there and trying to form community, and I still am in contact with every single one of them. And I think that's why education is still alive for us radical teachers, because we have built communities with people we trust and can keep us going. Even if we're not talking to each other all the time, we know we got each other's back.
Yeah, real quick, I just want to piggyback on what you're saying, Emma, because Vero was such a major part in helping me transform into the educator I want to be. And Kristen was, I mean, I know you know Kristen is like everybody's mother. And there was so many times where, you know, she would invite us over, she would make us fry bread, she would just have us all in her house. And it was just like this beautiful, loving experience. And that is exactly why I think I am the educator I am today, is because of the educators who supported me and uplifted me and mentored me in times that, you know, I thought I wasn't going to continue on this path. So anytime I can call out and shout out my mentors, Vero and Kristen, I just want to do it because, you know, love them so much. Got to give my gratitude.
I'll go ahead. I went to Whitworth in Spokane, which is a predominantly, like, it's a very small university. It's a private Presbyterian university. I was fortunate enough in high school to receive the Act 6 Leadership Scholarship. So I was really excited as a high school senior to get my school paid for. I was super into it, but I was not excited about staying in town and going like 20 minutes down the road because everybody else was leaving and they were going to try stuff. And so I was really worried about staying in the place where I did not feel welcomed or like I belonged. And so that already set me up for just like a battle of, I don't see myself in this place ever, and I never have. And now I'm here. And for me, I struggled really, really bad academically in college. And I never really felt that I guess you would say my gen ed teachers or instructors in college were really supportive of me and kind of just saw me as like, that diversity quota is not doing so hot. She doesn't know her stuff. And so I didn't really get a lot of support from those instructors, but it was actually the advisor for the Act 6 scholarship program that was on my campus, Esther Louie. She had been running that program for the 10 years it had been at Whitworth and within Washington State. And she was just a die-hard, radical, one of those badass grassroots educators that, you know, she really fought for students, she fought for the people, and she was down with Brown and everyone else and like fought for the power. And I really, really needed her mentorship when I was there. And she was just great. She had those come to Jesus moments with me to say like, Zenovia, girl, you have to kind of like go to class and do some stuff. And I was like, what? You guys didn't say that in the orientation. Like, and she like really had those moments with me, and also was there with me when I was like, I can't do this. I don't belong here. I don't think I should be in college. Like, I should just be done. And she was like, there's no reason for you to ever say that. And you deserve this spot. And, you know, reminded me of what got me there. But it's crazy when I think about it. She was not an instructor for me. She was my advisor of the scholarship I received. She was not a professor for me. She was not in the School of Ed for me. She was an outside person that gave me that. And when I think back on that, I feel really sad that I didn't have people in my School of Ed who supported me in that way, in that real loving way. Don't get me wrong. I had some bomb ass School of Ed professors that like really showed me really great skills to be a teacher, but we never talked about race. We never talked about diversity. We never talked about social justice in the classroom. We only talked about classroom management. We only talked about teaching to the standards and making strong units and lesson plans. And, you know, I felt prepared in that sense when I walked in the classroom, but I didn't feel prepared to address the homelessness that was in my classroom, the abuse that was happening with my students, and the oppression that was happening between me and the white supremacy curriculum and culture that was happening in my classroom, and what it was doing to my students at the same time. I never got any instruction on any of that. And that really, really sucked to start school and not have been prepared for the real parts of teaching, but to be prepared for, you know, what teaching looks like on paper and what it looks like on a box. So I'm very thankful for the mentors I had at Whitworth and the people that kept me going, but I really did not feel a part of that campus at all. And I really stuck to my Act 6 family and the cadre members I had with Act 6. I still talk to those people to this day. We are still doing our thing over in White Center. We're up in Tacoma. We're over in Spokane. Like, there's a huge alumni network that have continued to fight and push for students like us in secondary education and post-secondary. So I'm thankful that I had actual peers who were my mentors when I was at my prep program.
Yeah, I feel that, the peers. I did my bachelor's over at the University of Connecticut because I got a scholarship and I just wanted to get out of there. I was so done. I came back though because my family really needed me to, and I just felt like I needed to be back over on the West Coast. And I did my master's at UW with the Seattle Teacher Residency, which I loved my time in it, and it was because of my cohort. Like, we just got really close. We did affinity groups in one of the courses we did, which was the best. And I just I owe so much to my fellow Black, Indigenous, like, teachers of color in that affinity group. Like, one is still my best friend, like Jasmine Nguyen, amazing educator at Highland Park Elementary, and she has just gotten me through so much. And that cohort, especially the BIPOC educators, affinity group we did, was really what helped me unlearn all the white supremacy that was kind of like shoved into me during my own like, well, 3rd grade to 12th grade education. And I was really struggling with my identity because, you know, like I had spent so long shoving it down to be able to code switch and to be able to be accepted, you know, and to be able to look like my brother who is white presenting and amazing too, you know, and so they were really there for me in that affinity group space to really unlearn that and empower me to take back charge of my identity, of my Native Hawaiian identity and heritage. And I don't know where I would have been as an educator without them, especially Jasmine, who to this day, like we still analyze things together. I'm like, guess what so-and-so said? And just how to navigate the racism that we face and prejudice and discrimination we face as educators of color in the school system that we're actively trying to dismantle. And like I said, I just don't know what I would do without my peers who have lived experiences like me and that are also different than me to help me understand how other educators of color are walking through this space. Because, you know, we have similarities, but we're also vastly different.
Okay, so there's a question I want to ask you all. It's not part of the questions that we rehearsed, or not, we didn't rehearse anything, first of all, everybody, but not part of the questions that we made a list of. So my question is, we live in 2020, right? And everything around us right now feels like it's just like coming to pieces, and fires all around us, and fires that we can't put out individually, right? So my question is, did your teacher ed programs prepare you to be a teacher in 2020?
Dang, that's a good question. I need to think like 2 seconds on that because that's really good.
You know, I would say that they did. I took a lot of, particularly because of my major, which was language literacy and culture studies, I took ethnic study classes like African American studies and Latinx studies, and we did a lot of classes for teaching to ELL students, and I was in a minor that was education and social justice, and that is where a lot of my radical teaching prepped me. And even in early elementary education, Kristen French and Annalise and Jessica Stone, my professors, I knew ahead of time which teachers I wanted to be with because I knew that they would really bring the content and really push me forward. And so, and they're slowly building an empire in within Woodring. But I feel like because I knew which classes to take and had talked to other people in connection with like other people of color that were not necessarily in my cohort, but in general, yeah. I think overall, I am not a reflection of Woodring, and I feel like Woodring would very much claim that often of like, oh, can we, so-and-so is coming, can you sit in this meeting and talk about all the work that you're doing? And that would basically be claimed by Woodring, but the work that I am doing in the classroom does come from my studies of Woodring, but then it also comes from other parts, and I'd say they tried.
I feel similarly. I would say like, yes, in a way, but I don't think in the way they meant to, if that makes any sense. I think they provided me a residency in Seattle where I was like in the classroom 4 out of 5 days a week for the whole year. Like I saw from Jumpstart all the way to kindergarten graduation and the last day of school, which I think provided me with like real experience to learn from a really great like social justice oriented educator who now teaches in Renton. She's really amazing. And it allowed me a chance to be close to teachers of color to learn from. But I think that wasn't super purposeful on their part. Like they didn't go in and be like, okay, Kaitlin Kamalei is going to lead with this, this, and this. You know, I took the initiative to make it into that experience and seek the experience that I wanted to better myself for my students. And so I actually now mentor for STR2, and I was really against it because I was like, I don't want to open up my classroom. What do I have to open up? And then my friend kind of convinced me because the student teacher I had this last year needed an emergency placement switch. And it was just so beautiful. She is an educator of color as well. She's also a PI. And it was so amazing to try to give her the experience, the full experience I wanted and fought so hard for. So like mentoring her in that affinity of both being educators of color, because my mentor teacher was not an educator of color, still an amazing, beautiful individual and really helped me. But there are just some things that she just couldn't get. Like she tried really hard, but there are some things that I came and I was like, I don't know what to do about this. I think I got like, you know, I think someone was putting their white fragility on me and I don't know what to do now because I'm left with this really icky feeling. And she tried, but she just couldn't. Versus when my student teacher came to me, I was able to be like, hey, I get it. That does happen in this program sometimes. And like, let me listen and tell me what you need in this situation. And I was able to mentor her in the way that I really wish I got to.
I love, Kaitlin, that you kind of got to do like a full circle moment. Like you experience, I don't love that you had to experience it, but I do love that you went through it and then you were able to mentor your student teacher in a better way that you wish you would have gotten. Like you were able to have that reflection prior to having that student teacher. I feel like that's really priceless. That's really good.
Thank you. She's amazing. So it was easy.
I feel like, did my prep program prepare me for teaching in 2020? No, not one bit. They prepared me for teaching in 2001, 2014, you know, shout out to the 2000s, like great times. And they prepared me for teaching, like I mentioned earlier, teaching to the standards, classroom management, assessments, data tracking, like holla at me, I'm your girl. But that was not teaching. That's not what I realized when I got to the classroom. That is not saving me. And the students were like, that doesn't matter here. Like we're the real deal. And they quickly schooled me in what I needed. And I was walking in with like this very white supremacist ideal of the classroom and what a teacher should be, very authoritarian. You know, I remember having like 3 different people in my building when I started my first year tell me, don't smile until after Christmas. And I was like, what does that even mean? Like, that sounds horrid. And they were like, well, you want them to respect you. These kids are wild. You can't smile until after Christmas. And I was like, I mean, I'm wild. Like, I'm a wild adult, like, but I'm going to smile. And I feel like my prep program didn't prepare me for students that I experience and students that are in our world today, which are fierce young people who are coming up ready to fight and ready to make a difference. And my prep program did not teach me to challenge my students. They did not teach me to give my students democratic power in the classroom. They didn't teach me to be a partner with my students in their learning journey. They taught me that I'm up here and they're down here, and that's the way it needs to stay until the standards are met. So I learned all that. Honestly, I'm not gonna say on my own, like I'm amazing. I just woke up and I was like, oh my God, this is the way it should be done. But I learned that, I mean, I am, but I learned this through experience. Like I learned it through colleagues. Shout out to Tamasha Ahmedi. I learned it with colleagues, Claire Principe, people who I worked with in my first couple of years. I learned it from the colleagues I work with now. Shout out to my Mountain View peeps, Amelia Bowen, Erin Enquist. Like I learn it every day from people who are like-minded individuals who are ready to bring our students together with us in this journey. So I did not feel prepared at all. If I'm looking at some data, yes. If I'm looking at a student, no.
Yeah, I kind of want to just like tag on to this question just because, you know, I'm a teacher in 2022. So this really makes me think about something. I think it was Gloria Lutz in Billings. I went to one of her talks over here in White Center, must have been like 2 years ago. And she talked about how so often older educators or folks from older generation to begin with, anybody who's older, they so often say things like, well, you have it so good right now, or you have, that we've made so much progress. And the thing about that comment, and this is what Gloria Ladson-Billings says, is that what we fail to realize is that in 2001, kids who were like 9, 10, 11-year-olds, and even those who were just born in 2001, their first experience with the world was 9/11. So they came into a world that was already seeing violence from the get-go. And then we had the financial crisis. We had the Black Lives Matter movement, where we were starting to see, and we also had technology start to come to the forefront, where we were seeing Black death being broadcasted all over Facebook. And so young people are actually growing up in a world where they're seeing almost a decline in the way people treat each other and respect each other. And violence has definitely escalated on a global level. And so, when I think about what Gloria Ladson-Billings said, she was referencing from 2001 to now, right? And that the 20 years that we're talking about in that time period feels like it happened so quickly, and teacher ed programs have not kept up with it. And basically nobody has kept up with it, right? Except for people who are in the movement work. So anyways, it just makes me think that really no teacher ed program has adequately prepared educators to be teachers in this time period. But, I will also say shout out to Western, because ESJ and Vettel and, Kristen and everybody. But anyways.
Okay, whose webinar is this? No, I'm just kidding.
This is paid for by Western. I'm just kidding. It's literally not. It literally is not. And to the person
so much money from
her name is Gloria Ladson-Billings. Yeah, Gloria Ladson-Billings. So this kind of leads me into my next question, right? Young kids who are, let's say, 4 or 5 years old, they were moving into 2001, 9/11, going through major experiences of violence and seeing death on TV. Right now, elementary school kids are seeing those same things. They're also seeing racism. They're seeing anti-Black violence. They're seeing anti-Muslim racism. They're seeing so many things that are really hard to process even as adults. So my question to you all is, can young kids handle these conversations?
I mean, hands down. Hell yeah, they can. Like, they really can. And there's research out there, tons of research out there that talks about as young as, now I can't quote any of the research. Like, I know it's out there, but I'm gonna quote it all wrong. But like super, super young babies, I'm talking like young kids, do recognize race and ethnicities, and they realize that stuff. And so I feel like, not that I'm going to be out there preaching to 9-month-old babies, like, get with the movement, y'all, but like, we know that that stuff is happening and they are taking it in. And so I feel like it's really important for us down to that pre-K level and elementary school to have these types of conversations with these kiddos, because it's in the world around them. And no matter how hard we try and shelter them or hide them from it, it's still out there. And when we do that, and when we shelter them from those things, it's a harsher reality when they get to the point where they are able to understand or mature enough to understand. And so I feel like there definitely is a way to go about it. I'm not saying you're gonna lay this on, 7 and 8 year olds the same way you might have this conversation in a high school 11th grade classroom, but they can have these conversations, and they want to have these conversations. I've noticed in the classroom is they feel so empowered when you talk to them like the tiny humans they are, like they are young people. And I feel like, yes, you can have these conversations with them, and you should.
This is like my favorite argument against ethnic studies, to be honest, because it's like so like, it's even not rooted in like scholarly research that is upheld, like white scholarly research that's upheld by our society, if you think about it, because developmentally kids are in, first off, that critical period where learning is like, especially, I teach kindergarten and first grade, but also developmentally, they're in the overgeneralizing stage. So, and this is where like prejudices and racism can just grow and grow and grow if we don't like nip it in the bud there, because kids developmentally overgeneralize the world, you know? And so if we don't counteract those overgeneralizations with the truth and the facts, it's just going to fester and fester and fester. And I'm talking about for our white students. I always tell my white parents, I'm like, yeah, they need this too, because my job is to make them a great white ally. And then also for our students of color, like you heard in like definitely in my story and then in probably other stories too, you know, internalized racism, internalized overgeneralizations, internalized prejudice, internalized discrimination. And so I always love that argument, because I'm like, like even scientifically, like just like not even related to like race, like this is the stage where we need to correct those overgeneralizations that can just create so much harm for them and others.
For sure. And just they're living in it, and it doesn't make sense for us to ignore it in the classroom, and it's so detrimental to not mention it, because like growing up and going to school and feeling not intelligent enough because I didn't understand what was going on in the classroom, but then I go home and like have to translate for my mom for calling the doctor and doing things, and I'm like, Mom, I don't know what that means. It's in English. I've never heard it in Spanish either. And so making sure that that we are teaching them with the reality of things, and then preparing them to live in this society where they just need to know the truth in order to change it as well. I remember I was really nervous last year at the end of I had a very good mentor, Mr. Cueto in Bellingham, and so he let me do anything. He was like, go for it. And so we did units about refugees, and his wife, Dr. Cueto, who was also my professor, helped me with the books, because she is in this big literacy committee where she just reviews tons of books. And she, in her class, I saw books that I had never seen in my entire life, and I was 22, and I was just like, these kids need to read these books. I needed to read these books. And they talk about things like power, racism, and all those sort of things that they're out there, and I just didn't know, and I would have benefited from it. But then also asking my mentors, like, when is it a good time? How do I know if I'm not being too radical? Because I want a job. I don't want to get fired. And then my mentors were just like, you know, scope it out, talk to people, see what they're doing, and like, when in doubt, just go for it, but then also just take your measures. And that always like made me sad to just like take your measures, because at the end of the day, I still felt like I would have been suppressing some part of myself if I wasn't teaching to what I wanted to, just because I wanted a job. And then I remember the first topic that came up, I was reading a book about communities, and it talked about police and how the police help the community. And then it just felt so wrong to just read the book and then go off and not say anything. So then I stopped and paused, and I was like, okay, yeah, this is what their job's meant to be, but they don't always do that, especially in our communities, people of color, because Zanovia and I teach in a very diverse community where majority of the school is Latinx, the whole school is on free and reduced lunch. So they know these things. They've seen them in encounters with police and have felt the same fear that we probably have felt growing up, and things, not knowing it. So it's better to tell them, and they're aware of it. And I remember texting Zenovia right after. I'm like, I just talked about police brutality. Do you think that's okay? She's like, yeah, I did that too. And so then the next coming months, just there was Black History Month, and I'm like, oh, like I can do whatever I want because I should. And also I feel like I've gotten a lot of support from the staff at Mount View, and our principal. She's always, even if I'm not supposed to be teaching these social justice things within my time frames, my principal will go in there and she'll see that we're talking about identity and positive community building and things like that, and she'll just congratulate me, and I feel really supported in that way.
Hey, good shout out, because she's watching right now, our principal. You gonna get another job. Just kidding.
First of all, I just love you all so much. You're saying so amazing things, and I'm just loving and enjoying this session with you all so much. I was just thinking sort of about, first of all, what y'all saying, and about white supremacy culture and how it forces, like what Emma was saying, it forces us to have to be worried about whether we can teach that in the classroom or not, or whether we can be our whole full selves in our classroom. Recently, you know, my close friends on this panel know that I was on a medical leave from January to June because my dad had stage 4 colon cancer, and he passed away in May. And this was, I mean, it was obviously one of the most challenging times in my life to like watch my father in his slow demise. And something that I was not prepared for was to have my niece, who's 5 years old, be part of that process, and having to figure out, how do we talk to her about this? How do we talk to her about death? How do we talk to her about how Tata, which is what we call, or what she calls grandpa, how Tata is changing from day to day, and it's getting really skinny and it's getting really sick and things like that. And so I also remember there were a lot of people who were giving us advice that, which now I'm aligning with like the tenets of white supremacy culture, which is don't talk about it. Don't bring her around that. Don't let her go to the funeral. Don't let her do this. Don't let her do that. And it felt so wrong to do that, right? Because I come from a family that is so rooted in culture, in unity, in embracing one another. And so having to be told that this is how we have to do it, which is separating her from our family and not giving her an outlet to express, it felt so wrong. So my question for you all is, how do you combat against white supremacy culture in your classrooms and in your curriculum? Because we want to be teaching the young people the right things and how to address and how to talk about it. So how do you do that?
So I totally feel that. And I also like just felt what Emma was also saying at the last part of what you said so much, because that's real. There is a fear, you know, but then just like we all experience, and just like Estefa was saying, like, it just feels wrong not to do it. And so my first year teaching, it really was a core subject, but I called it like I would call it ethnic studies with the kids, but on my board it said social studies, you know, or social studies / science for like my objectives and everything. But then this year I promised myself, I was like, no, I can call it out. I can call out what I'm doing. So when I say I taught grades 2, 3, ELA and ethnic studies, that was not my job title given to me by Seattle Public School District. My job title was grades 2, 3 ELA teacher. And that was it. And I made ethnic studies a norm because I tacked on ethnic studies to my title. On my signature, it says ethnic studies. Anytime that I introduce myself in my title, I always say grades 2, 3, ELA and ethnic studies. And on my board, it's an ethnic, like my core subject is ethnic studies. It says reading, writing, ethnic studies, social, emotional learning. And my schedule card said ethnic studies, because I really wanted to call it out for the kids that this is what you're getting. Like, this is, you're getting what I wish I was getting, and you're getting these amazing life skills. But I remember it was my first year at Leshai Elementary last year, and it was curriculum night. And I was going to take the major leap and present my curriculum unit outline to my parents, which we have a diverse school. We have about, I think it's like 60% BIPOC students, and then 40% white students. And I was nervous, and I was almost shaking when I began, because this was the first year, one, that I wasn't teaching like 80% students of color, 90% students of color, whose families were like, yeah, you do you. We had that conversation yesterday too. But this was the first time where I had 40% white families, and I was really, really nervous. But I got up there, I presented my units about, and I told them, I was like, this is important. And you saw their, like, or I guess you all didn't see, but I saw their faces completely drop. They're like, and I was like, this is important because your kids need to know how to be good advocates for themselves and good white allies. And that is my job right now. And so I have amazing ethnic studies colleagues across Seattle Public Schools who are just absolutely amazing. I use some of their lesson plans, and then I also created my own just because I really like it. Like, we did a whole activism unit where we studied modern activism, different accounts. Like, I talked about Mauna Kea and my time on there. We talked about Colin Kaepernick. We talked about Malala Yousafzai, and we really analyzed like what type of activism they did. And then we wrote letters to the city council to like become activists ourselves too. And they got to write about whatever they wanted, which was super cool because it was like anything from like homelessness and food insecurity all the way to like police brutality. Like, some chose police brutality, which was amazing. So I think that's it. Just like normalize it. Let's make it the norm. Like, why can't we make it the norm? Why can't we include it as a core subject even if OSPI doesn't tell us that it is? Like, can we do that?
Yes, I'm over here like on mute. Yes, yes, Kaitlin. I completely agree. I feel like one thing I did in my classroom was like just normalize it, but it did take work. I will say I did not come out the gate like, y'all, we're about to get school today. Like, I literally was like, no, there's no time for that. You know, when I started teaching, I wasn't in a dual language school, so I was just teaching gen ed 2nd grade, and social studies was low-key never in my schedule because, you know, you needed reading and writing and math, and then there was the recess, and then there was all the drama in between that is elementary school, and social studies often like just got left out, as well as science and art, you know, important stuff, which is crazy. But I feel like for me, I realized at some point, maybe my second or third, probably after my third year, when that contract becomes solidified and you're like, oh, they can't catch me now. I feel like that's when I was like, I think I should start doing something. And that it is a sad conversation in itself, that I felt like I had to wait for that white supremacist deadline of like, you can't be authentic and teach to what you want until we tell you you're good enough, until we feel like we've evaluated you enough. But that's another webinar we can do later. But I felt like, okay, I want to do something. And I love reading. I did my major in elementary ed and then reading instruction for K-12. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to do it in books. My favorite thing to do is bring books in the classroom. And I literally teach all subjects through a book. So I'm doing math and social studies, anything through a book. And the first thing I did was a library audit of my classroom and the books that they gave me. I was like, there are some white books up in here that are super old, you know, published circa 1973, like Squanto, Friend of the Pilgrims, where it was like, whoa, questionable, you know, things like that, where I was too stressed out as a first year teacher to notice that. And it was just like, books, thank God, you know, I have supplies. And when I was able to calm down, I realized there are a lot of books in here that are just continuing the cycle. So even if I am teaching and doing the right thing and empowering my students in the classroom, I send them back to their desk and they're going to pull out a book that's going to dismantle everything I've said. And it shows them that they may be worthy when Ms. Clark says it, but the rest of the world doesn't think they're worthy because they're nowhere else. They're only in my classroom. And so I spent a lot of time throwing away books. I don't know if it was okay, but I kind of was like, we don't need this, and like packing them up and like hiding them in closets and stuff, and just saying like, oh. I'm probably going to get in a lot of trouble. I kind of wish that my administrator might not be on here listening to all my dirty secrets, but I got rid of things just because they weren't supportive. And I started bringing in books about just cultures around the world, about my students who were in my classroom, and just reaching out and like using my personal money and buying a ton of books. And now, you know, I would say like 98% of my classroom library is my personal property. And I would say like 80% of those books are BIPOC centered and LGBTQ plus centered and different religious centered, like, you know, all you can think of. And I try to instill that so it's normalized. So from the, you know, the books that I read, the books that they read, it's every day we're going to see ourselves in the classroom. And it has been a journey though. And I will say it started with me. I didn't just walk in and do that. I really had to dismantled the white supremacy that was holding me back. So I had to realize, if I'm going to ask my students to be authentic and teach to all these authentic identities, I have to be authentic with them. And so in doing that, that meant I needed to come out as a lesbian woman to my students, and I needed to be honest with them and show them that we're going to, you know, talk about all these different people. And I want you to know that everybody has identities, including your teacher, which is always crazy for them because, you know, they think we live at school, we eat at school, like we don't go home, we don't have parents, like it's crazy. So when they realize like there are characters and characteristics that describe me, it was awesome. And I feel like that moment of taking that barrier away from myself allowed my students to come on this journey with me to open themselves up to other people. But it definitely took, I had to do that work within myself, and I had to get rid of the, you know, racist practices that I was doing in the classroom and the things that I thought were good teaching that wasn't. And once I got rid of that, I was able to open my students up to the world that is them, that they make up.
And that work is really hard.
Hard.
Just like it takes a village to raise a child, I feel like it takes a village to raise a teacher. And I, once again, want to say that everything I know is because other people have helped me get there and have given me resources and given me a space and time to reflect on it and what it means to be a teacher in 2020. And I also want to give a shout out to Juan Cordova, to Solem. Those were my first mentors in Highline, and they helped me a lot with the curriculum. And we met regularly to talk about, this is what I'm feeling in my classroom, and like, this is what I want to do, or this is what I envision it to be like. And they helped me get those strategies and look at the curriculum and incorporate different things while I'm still focusing on the standards and whatnot. And so it really is reaching out to Zanovia. I knew I wanted to be friends with Zanovia, so I was like, okay, help me. And yeah, it's definitely building that community where you can reach out and say, hey, I need help with this thing. I think when kids really need it, or hey, I know you're doing excellent things here and there about certain things, I would like to know more about that, and I can use it at my second grade level. And that's really it. Building, I think it's really important as a first year teacher that I have found a lot of people that have helped me through this journey. And thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, so two things that I want to say before I forget. The first thing is, if you see me shifting around and moving around like a million times during this panel, I want to apologize. I'm so tired of sitting. Kaitlin and Zenovia and I have been part of the WEA Board of Directors meeting today, which started at 9 a.m. So we've literally been sitting all day on top of 2 other days of meetings all day long. So I'm just moving around. I'm so sorry. The second thing I wanted to say is, Ellie, we are going to have a resource share toward the end of today's session. So you will get some resources that you can take back to your other colleagues or other folks who want the resources. So you'll be getting that list, don't worry. Okay, so a real big topic in all classrooms is classroom management. And I think it's one of the like unspoken, but also spoken fears for educators is how to walk into a classroom and make sure that like, not only are you respecting the young people who are in there, but that you all are developing a classroom community together. Also knowing that you're gonna have young people that are off the walls at all times, sometimes. I just feel like I have young people in I'm a high school teacher, right? So I have young people in my classroom who are wild, just like me. And that's the great thing about being a teacher, I think. But what does culturally responsive classroom management look like? Because we've all seen the educators who kick the students out of the classroom. We've all been in the buildings where one student might be having some sort of like emotional reaction or even a physical reaction to things, and then all the other students are taken out of the classroom. What sort of practices are you all implementing in your classroom to make sure that you're responding to the needs of all your students while maintaining that environment of love, respect, consent, and also just your individual? Not like white supremacy individual. When I say like I meant your individualism, like your style. That's what I'm talking about.
I was gonna say, we need some collectivism up in here.
I got it. As a first year teacher, I can say that it was really freaking hard. I was so tired this year. There are times I cried and I just didn't know what to do. I felt like I was doing everything, but I wasn't doing enough. And I think that's one of my biggest fears of teaching, and where I feel like I'm not doing enough. And I dwell sometimes on the harm that I could have done. And I think I worry too much, but I think of how I walk in. This first year had its up and downs, but I loved every single one of the students. And I think that's really what it comes down to. Education is love. And so giving a space for these children to be loved no matter what happens, and patience is so hard. And sometimes my mom makes fun of me because she's like, how are you a teacher? You're just so impatient. And like it's just keep going and keep doing it, because the kids are going through a lot. And so making sure that you are looking at the child as a whole child, and knowing that there are things that are going on at home. And as a teacher, I knew the things that were going on at home. And so trying to find new ways of like getting their energy with like a fidget toy that we had agreements on of we agreed upon these times, and you share it with these people. And also the classroom meetings, and like morning circles, and we sit in a circle where we see each other. I also started doing, I went to in Lakesh conference in the winter, and I had heard already about the in Lakesh chant, but I hadn't thought about incorporating it. But there was a lot of let's say unfair treatment towards one another in recess. So in every meeting we started with in Lakesh, where you are my other me. If I do harm to you, I do harm to myself, and reminding these children that we're all humans, we all make mistakes, but we also need to find a common ground for all of us to be loved and feel loved. And so that's what I tried really to do with classroom management, is like making them feel like I love them and they should love each other. And I told them that you don't have to love everybody, but you should treat everybody with respect, because they do deserve it. A lot of things happened.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, diverse books are like my favorite topic, of course, but like culturally responsive classroom management comes close. And it's because like Emma, like my first year teaching, oh my God, like especially those first 3 months. And I reflect back on it, because I also don't want to pass that off to my student teachers now, which is why we spend so much time working on classroom management in my classroom, because I was really struggling with not policing my students, not creating the same space I've seen over and over again. And so I went the whole other way. I had low expectations. I let them get away with anything, because I was in kind of this like stuck, because I didn't want to do what I was taught of like clip charts and of like, make like not smiling. I got that advice too. Like, don't smile until at least Thanksgiving or whatever, Thanksgiving break. And I just didn't want to do that. And so I went all the way the other way, all the way to the other side. And thank God I had the best STAR mentor, who like STAR mentors and SPSs that like for early career educators for your first year teaching, Keonda Wilson, who made me wake up and have those tough conversations and realize that by not having high expectations for my students, I was failing them just as much, well, probably not just as much, but a lot, almost as much, if not just as much as policing them and being authoritarian. And so I took like a long, hard look at myself and figuring out what educator I want to be. I read Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain by Zaretta Hammond. I now like have well, I've only had like 2 student teachers, but I have my student teachers read it with me, just because I always love rereading it. And I think what gets me is that a lot of educators read that book and think it only has to deal with instruction, you know, or it only has to deal with like culture, like talking about deep culture. But really what it can be applied to classroom management too. Like I have this motto, and my student teacher this last year used to tease me all the time because I used to always say this motto, which is my goal throughout the year is to make students be independent from the teacher. Like my first year teaching, once I got my stuff together and I had that motto, my motto was that no matter who walked in my classroom, they could still run a beautiful and warm and like independent from me, not from each other, because they were interdependent. We talked about collectivism a lot in my class, no matter what adult was in the room. And so, and I taught first grade my first year teaching. And these first graders were able to walk themselves down the hall to lunch, like completely without me like monitoring them, because I created systems like
That's a big deal, you guys. Like I know it's stuff that you teach high school, but like first graders walking them. So I just need to let people know who aren't elementary school teachers. That is huge that they could do that. Like, because lunch is wild. Lunch is for good reason. Like I'm wild, but Kaitlin, that is good.
Oh, thank you. They liked it too, and that's the biggest thing is I like pumped them up. I was like, can you do it? I know you can do it. Do you think you can do it? And I would like have like leaders and I'd be like, okay, I'm going to check in with everyone, but I'm going to really check in with my leaders to see if we earn a snowflake for our snowflake jar. And it was like, I called it the interdependent jar, so that anytime they were independent from me and interdependent on each other, they earned a snowflake. And then when they like filled up the jar, they got a party. I mean, I aligned it with school breaks, let's be honest. And please do not give away my secret to my little ones, because they'll be like, what? But it's really that. It's like, I wish educators had that motto of love, like loving them like they're your own. And I feel like some educators feel like that means that you just let them get away with things, and then you get mad at them the 10th time they don't do it right because you didn't tell them the way and teach them the way the other 9 times. But you gotta love them like your own. Like I love my cousins enough to make them do the work, but also to love them and support them and tell them how amazing they are, but also have the tough conversations of, you know what, like that really hurt me and we need to repair our relationship now. And it will get prepared, or it will get repaired, I promise, but it gotta take some work. And I mirror that, because like there are times when I've lost it too, like, you know, where just situations have gotten not super escalated, but I don't keep my calm demeanor as well as I can. And I go to my students, like I remember I not blew up, but I did kind of get back into a back and forth with this student that I normally don't. And I was at a training the next time, and I felt so bad that I took my lunch from that training that was in another building. I went straight over to Leshai Elementary. I saw her and I apologized, and I started crying. And I apologized. I was like, I am so sorry. I should not have done that. I hurt our relationship. And she started crying too and was like, Miss Brandon, I felt so bad too. I shouldn't have hurt our relationship either. But it was just such a beautiful moment where we came together, because I set her up as much as possible to be independent from me, but she knows I'm still always there in case she needs me, and that teachers and adults fail too. And when we own up, they can own up. Sorry, that was a lot. I just love classroom management.
No, I mean, that's so real. Also, Zenovia, I really want to say that high school students can be trusted to walk in the hallway without causing any issues, but that's just not the reality. Okay, that is not the reality in my high school teacher life. Love the young people, love the high schoolers, but you get into some stuff on their way to lunch, okay?
Oh, I remember I was in high school as well. I was getting into some stuff too. So.
You need a snowflake jar. Get a snowflake jar.
Yeah.
So Kaitlin, actually what you're talking about leads right into our next question, which is like PBIS and how that ties in with culturally responsive classroom management. So can I just go right back to you?
Are you sure, Zenovia? Do you want to take it?
Maybe Zenovia wants to take it.
No, I want you to start this off. I will, listen, just do it. My brain is like.
It's that board meeting. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry, Larry. Sorry, JD. This is like my favorite topic because I actually, well, I don't love is a strong word for PBIS, but I really do like PBIS when it's used with an anti-racist lens, because just like any system, and I'm even talking like culturally responsive teaching system, any system we use, if we don't go in with that self-work and with that lens of anti-racism and of racial justice and social justice, we're just perpetuating white supremacy, and we can just be feeding into the school to prison pipeline. And so that's why I love talking about PBIS with schools. I did like a little mini presentation at Leshai because a lot of teachers were afraid. They're like, but I don't want to write up my kids and I don't want to send them to the office. And I was like, that is not what PBIS is. Like, who told you that? So, but I did a whole presentation about the myths of PBIS and how to have like, I mean, a whole presentation, it was like 15 minutes, but how to have like a racial equity lens, because what I do like about PBIS is the consistency, the levels of support, and it's support, it's positive. Like there is not, I hate. It's like one of my least favorite things when schools turn PBIS systems into writing up students, into like tracking them. And I've had to fight so hard against some administration about not turning it into a tracking system, like keeping it that beautiful system of consistency so kids know that when they walk into their classrooms that they are going to be loved, that they are going to be held to high expectations. And so that's where I see doing it with a anti-racist lens and a culturally responsive lens of like, yes, we have shared expectations that are around the school, but it's to help our community. It is not to help someone as an individual. And it's also high expectations, because I'm not just expecting you to show up, I'm expecting you to learn because I love you, and I love you enough to get that education for you and create a culturally responsive community. So anyways, that is, yeah, take it away.
I loved that. You said something that really really struck a chord with me of like how PBIS can be done well with that anti-racist lens. And my thoughts are so much so that I hate PBIS because it's not done the right way. And I do agree with parts of it, like you said, the consistency and the positivity and the level of supports that you can give students, but it's never, in my experience, done in a positive way. I feel like it's almost like a Band-Aid or a cover-up for policing students and for those traumatizing behaviors that push Black and brown students into, write-ups and suspensions and being kicked out of the classroom, but they cover it up with, a fake, really fogged up view of PBIS. And so for me, I really think, I was thinking about the classroom management too, because we were talking about this earlier, and I remember we were saying like, man, we're always labeled that teacher that gets those kids according to everybody else because our classroom management is so great and like we're so good with students. Yeah, you're so good. And that, not that I'm saying I'll take any student, but it's not that I'm some magic kid whisperer. I just treat them like individuals and like build relationships with them. And when you do that, they listen to you, and low key, sometimes they don't. And sometimes I don't agree with them, but I treat them as a partner and as an individual. And I think that is one of the main things that goes into not only effective classroom management, but also effective and culturally responsive PBIS. If you don't have the relationships, it doesn't matter how many times you have a class meeting. It doesn't matter how many times you draft a charter or a set of agreements or whatever, or hand out, PBIS tokens or whatever. they're not going to do it if they don't feel trusted and respected by you. And so I also worry, though, because in some ways PBIS is like, you know, get to know your students, but we don't tell teachers to do the work that they need to do with themselves when it comes to implementing PBIS. So you have to build relationships with your students, but you also have to do some work yourself and like figure out what biases you have, what biases you have against students and their behaviors. Because even though we have PBIS, we legit still have hundreds of write-ups for kids for being disrespectful, which, what does that mean? Disrespectful looks different from me to the person sitting next to me, to the teacher above me, to middle school, to high school. Like, and, you know, we have PBIS, but why do we still have hundreds of referrals in elementary school for disrespect? So I think I agree with you, Kaitlin, that PBIS has to be done with an anti-racist lens. And it's not just a tool for policing students. Like, it's a tool to create a partnership between students and teachers and to make their learning better. And I also think if you're going to do PBIS in your school, in your district, you also need to be making your teachers accountable and have them reflect on themselves, because PBIS means nothing when you have a racist teacher putting those practices into place. There's no point. You give them a tiger ticket once you kick them out of your classroom, you know, like you give them a snowflake after you belittle them in front of everyone. Like, it doesn't matter unless you do that work. So like, relationships, key. Anti-racism, key. Reflect on your own biases as an educator, because they're there, key.
Very beautifully said, Zenovia. That key core things to know. And I've been, my friend Roche Lowe works at Sound Discipline, which does a lot of training of how to build relationships with the classroom, the families, the students. And she's helped me look at like the power dynamics in the classroom and the process of it all. Cause she'd asked me like, do you give rewards as a positive reinforcement? I'm like, yeah, sometimes I just don't know what to do, and I need them to like be happy for some and like want to work up for something. So like their sticker, their eraser is what I gotta give them now, because I don't know how to do it in the long run. I gotta get better at it, and I know I do. But just looking at who holds the power and like why are we once they get older too. I was in an internship in 6th grade with PBIS. This was my first like practice through it, and they didn't really care for it. It's just like, oh, these golden tickets don't get me anything in real life. Like, doesn't make me a better person that I know how to sit down and open my agenda and I got a golden ticket kind of thing. So making the rewards worthwhile of like also of building character, building morality and things like that, I think would be more valuable.
I love, Emma, how you talked about power dynamics, because that just like opened my mind, because I was like, oh yeah, that's the name for it. Because I agree, like when we as teachers are just handing out the rewards, that does send the message of a certain power dynamic. But if we, like, I love like giving the little, it was like Husky Bucks at one of my schools, like Husky Bus tickets, and I give it to my students, and I'm like, I want you to pick who you think you see helping our community right now. I want you to pick who is, you know, listening with like empathy to so-and-so. And I think that shifts the power dynamic, because they're like, wait, you're not giving it out? I'm like, no, you can do it. And it's that interdependence and then independence from a teacher too. So I love that you said power dynamics, because it really is like shifting that to collectivism. Like, that's collectivism. Like, you know, individualism is great every now and then, but can we have more collectivism?
Okay, thank you all. I actually want to go to one of the questions. It says, I'm just going to click this button that says answer live. I don't know what it's going to do. We'll see what happens. Can you see the question? No? Okay, well, it's from Gail Myers, who's one of our viewers right now, and they are just wondering, what do you imagine your first lessons this fall to be? How will you at your grade levels begin SEL?
Oh my God, Emma and I were just in a training last week. Honestly, I've been in a training since I feel like school closed in March, but we were just in a training talking about this because Emma and I are fortunate enough to work together, and we were working with some of our other colleagues thinking about like, what are the first 15 days going to look like in this 2020 classroom, which is buck wild, as we all know, and nobody's ever done it. And a lot of what we talked about, well, okay, let me back up. Last year, my school was super dope, and we decided the first 15 days of like student instruction days, we weren't teaching instruction in terms of academics, but we were building relationships and like classroom routines and like getting kids used to, you know, where things are in the classroom, expectations, growing together straight up for the first 15 days, which I was like, because I've never had a principal come out and be like, no, this is what's important. Like, we should do this so that way the kids are on board, they know what's going on, like you've already built that relationship, and when the curriculum starts, it starts that much better and that much stronger because you're not taking time to do that work at the same time, and the kids feel you know, a sense of trust and respect already, so you're able to reach them with open minds, open hearts, and open ears, right? And I just thought, dang, that's super dope, this is amazing. And it really was an awesome experience to just focus on that and not have the stress of like, oh my God, we got to teach this lesson. I got to get on pace. And how do I do that? And so when I was working with Emma, I was like, I really want to do what we did last year. I know that we're going to be virtual. I know it's going to be crazy different, but I think that's super important, and even more important because these kids haven't been in a school since March. I mean, we're getting first graders who are now in second grade, but like low key, they're still 6. They didn't finish their first grade. You know, their first or their second year of school was interrupted by a global pandemic, right? And they're still living, like it's not over. So we have talked about, we need to make those first 15 days community building and community, not just teaching like, you know, Zoom etiquette, keep your microphone muted, not stuff like that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about classroom community building, getting to know each other, learning each other's names, learning respect for each other, learning each other's stories, which can be done in these younger grades. And we have, you know, done little things like figured out icebreakers and fun games to play because, you know, we're elementary school. I know, Steffa, you could do some of these icebreakers, but I'm not sure your kids are going to be super excited for pajama day. We don't know. Maybe they will be. I mean, I throw it in there because let's be real. We all like, you can only see me from here up. So like pajama day every day on Zoom. But like it needs to be about that fun and community and connection. And I think a lot of times as educators and within the traditional educational model, we don't make time for connections and community building. We're all about curriculum and content and pacing and, you know, get that stuff in because they got a test to take. They got to take a test in a certain amount of time. And so for me, my first 15 days are going to be community building and checking in with them and also checking in with their families. I'm going to be honest. This is not, we're in a different world. It's not just the students anymore that I'm teaching. I'm also working with the families because these kids are at home. So my first 15 days are going to be connecting with students, but also connecting with their families to figure out, how are you? Where are you? How can I help you? How can I use this privilege that I have as an educator who still has a job, still getting paid, still has benefits? You know, I'm fine, I'm healthy, and I'm super grateful, but what can I do to support you if there's anything? So I think the first 15 days, you got to build community. You got to understand the reality that we're in. This is not school like it's ever been done in America before. And I think this is a really good time for us to move in that direction of holding relationships with students super high up. Okay, I'm done. Anybody else?
I mean, all of that times a million. And it's kind of funny. I was just talking to my student teacher, and we just watched Dr. Bettina Love's Abolitionist Teaching and read a bunch of articles together about like culturally responsive teaching via distance learning. And that was the thing, is we were like, we need to community build. Like, I mean, I was already, you know, I always do that usually in the classroom, but I do feel like with distance learning, a lot of us are afraid. Like, we're like, they're so behind, we need to catch up. They just need to start in small groups right away. They need to start, you know, learning math and learning their letters and learning their numbers because of all that lost time. And I'm like, hold up. Like, hold up. We need to do relationships and community building first, or else that amazing math lesson that you planned, they're not going to care. That reading conference that you just did with them, they're not, you know, they might not want to even come on the Zoom with you. Like, and I think that's the thing, is we need to hold community building center and social emotional learning with a racial equity, anti-racist lens. Because I did see, I think was it Erica who dropped it in the chat, right? I love that quote. Because that's what kids need right now. And when we create a comfortable environment, their parents are going to be begging us to do more Zoom, you know, and I will, like, let's do it. But also they'll start advocating for themselves of, wait, Miss Brandon, Zoom time is at 11, which is what happened with my summer school kids. Is like, they again, kindergartners, they knew how to type in the numbers because they wanted to be there. And their parents, I mean, their parents are so resilient, and they are so resilient. And so when we create a comfortable environment, like, the world is our possibility, no matter if it's over Zoom or Schoology or Teams, etc.
And the biggest part is them showing up every day, every Zoom meeting, and making a big deal about it, because it's hard. Times are hard. And I did summer school where sometimes I had 6 students in a session, sometimes I had 1, and you just roll with it. And just being thankful that they had the opportunity to join, because they have a lot of things going on. So being cognizant of that and realizing that we are, now it's different. We are in their homes. And so not to continue policing them, even though they're still in their homes, like not having all these rules about how to use Zoom and they can't control their backgrounds. In Zoom, they can't control whether their parents can't be home to log them in, or if they have to go to an appointment, things like that. So just being really loving in that way, and forgiving, and continue to think about the ways that we as teachers do police students. So think of, do I really need to be expecting this of a student who is already trying very hard to even just show up and try to comprehend the content? And so also along with what Kaitlin and Zenovia said, community building and checking in on parents, I think that was my goal for all of my first year teaching, just like being sure that parents knew that I was there to help with resources. And COVID is still here, and making sure that I'm checking in with parents. We built that relationship very early on, so that they know that I am doing my very best to find the resources in the community, and that I will share those and go above and beyond, because this is a time where I feel like this is where I can show that I am providing the community with resources. I think that's a big part of why I want to why I became a teacher, is to make sure that the community has resources, because it's not just inside the classroom, it goes way beyond that. And acknowledging the beyond the classroom is really key for these first 15 days. Hopefully
I'm just so wowed by you all. I just also want to do a 20-minute time check, and I want to be really certain that we get to the resource share part of tonight's session. So I'm going to just pivot to that real quick, and then we'll come back to the last 2 questions that we have, just to make sure that all of our guests get the actual resources. So let me share my screen, and we'll do, whoops, can you see me again?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. All right, so it looks like we're starting with Kaitlin.
How did you know? No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, the first, this feels so uncomfortable sometimes, but so the first resource I want to share was Colorful Pages. I think Erica dropped it in the chat because she's like such an amazing supporter, and I absolutely love her to death. This is actually like my website, and I guess I'm almost officially like the director, because we're changing it into a nonprofit, and we do everything around diverse books and multicultural literature. So we provide like lesson plans, book lists. I make sure that anyone that writes for us prioritizes BIPOC authors, because I feel like as a person of color, I want to be able to tell my story first. And so we prioritize that and make sure that we really call that out. And so I hope you like it. It's a good resource, hopefully. And then my next one, I already shared. Oh, wait, can we go? Oh, yeah. I already shared, but I just wanted to call it out again because it's literally like my lifeline. It was kind of like my wake-up call. And I've read it 3 times just this last year, but culturally responsive teaching and the brain. And I really, really want to challenge everyone to think about it beyond just the instruction we're providing, but think about it as like, this is how we go into family partnerships. This is how we go into classroom management. This is even how we go into those staff meetings so that we are creating a culturally responsive environment also for our fellow like colleagues and our fellow WA members. So, yeah.
Ooh, this is mine. My staff last year, 2 years ago, I can't remember. I think it was last year. We had this awesome opportunity to bring a Seattle local author into our school and read this book. And then she did a couple of discussions with us and just kind of led us through the philosophy of her book. It's getting late, you guys. Her book, and how to apply this to the classroom. So the book is Cultivating the Genius of Black Children. We know, it's not a surprise to any of you, that our Black students are suffering in our public schools, and also our Black adults are suffering out in the world. So this was a really great book for me and my staff to just explore and understand. If we are trying to connect and understand and make the classrooms an open space and dismantle that white supremacy, we need to figure out how to do it. And it has really great ideas and just breakdowns of how kinesthetic learning might look in the classroom, and how to incorporate dance and movement and songs, which are a part so much of the Black and African culture of rhythm and movement in our learning. And so I really enjoyed it, even as a Black educator, to read this and think, oh snap, I needed that when I was in 2nd grade. Like, that's why I loved doing that so much in class. And so it helped me grow not only as an adult, but it also helped me figure out, how do I connect with my students in the classroom as a teacher for them.
Can I just say that I've seen districts that are reading books that are teaching Black children, teaching poor students, and even just the title of it, of this book, and how it's cultivating Black minds, really looking into how words play and what they really mean.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yes.
Thank you for that, Emma. I didn't even think of that. That's such a beautiful idea. This is another one of my resources, you guys. Clearly, just kidding. I'm about that Instagram life. I'm about social media. I am a child of technology, as Steph said. Shout out to the 2000s, because technology raised me. Naomi O'Brien is an amazing blogger. She's on Instagram. She's got products on Teachers Pay Teachers. Her big focus is literacy, but she also really, really focuses on social studies with an anti-racist lens. So, and a lot of people are moving towards calling that ethnic studies, whatever you want to call it. But she focuses along K-1 resources are really strong, but she also has gone up to 3rd grade. So I know for some of you who are out here who might be intermediate elementary teachers, I don't want you to sway away from her resources, because they are phenomenal. And even though they cater to kind of a K-2 mindset, it can be easily adapted and used at those upper grade levels, because it is really interesting topics and the kids are going to want to discuss it no matter what. So I highly consider, I have bought several of her products, she does ebooks that are really great, and they're awesome, and they have great discussion questions about tons of good stuff. And I just check her out. I could talk about her for hours, you guys. And now I keep forgetting I didn't just create this slideshow earlier today, but every time I see a resource, I'm like, yes, I love them. Another amazing Instagrammer who also has a podcast is Tori J Anderson. She is a Detroit Public Schools educator, and she is all about teaching it trill, which is a cross between teaching it true and teaching it real, which I love. And she has a Teacher Talk podcast that has a couple of episodes out there. And in their episodes, they're really all about, you know, what happens when you mix public school educators, drinks, and education? Like, what happens? And so they have these real conversations about policing in schools with our Black students, what it means to have more BIPOC educators in the classroom, curriculum being so white, things like that. And I've just really enjoyed listening to her podcast, especially as a BIPOC educator and not always having other BIPOC to talk to. It was almost like I was sitting at the table having drinks with them, chatting about all this stuff. So I encourage you to check out her Instagram, her podcast. She also has a website. She's an author. She is I believe a high school English teacher. So she has a lot of resources online as well for those older kids too.
This is me. I'm not sure if most of you have been able to access Teaching Tolerance. I feel like it is my go-to whenever I have a topic that I wanted to talk about, because this website has all kinds of ideas, plans, and like readings for all different grade levels, and you can like click between what type of topic, and they just are able to provide things that you don't have to come up with. And looking at the social justice standards also delineates what you could be doing for your grade level. It talks about the 4 anchors are justice, identity, diversity, and action. So those are things that we are trying to teach our students to become critical thinkers of the world and future change makers and great people that treat others with respect. And so it lists out those standards of, you know, going into community, identity, and how it all meshes together, and it gives you scenarios that you could do at their grade level. And it just really, I feel like it's bottom line a starter where you could look at that and see, okay, this is what I could be doing on like a Friday, add it in if I don't have time to incorporate it into the lesson. But many of these things I feel like is doable to blend in with your literacy. I think that's where I've been most successful, is being able to integrate it. In Mount View, we are trying very hard because it's a science or content integrated units. And so that's really helped me, because we're already integrating literacy with science and writing, and tacking one more thing is not so hard, because we're already trying so hard to mesh it all together so that we are really teaching to the children and things that they need and want to know. And that is what I have to say about that.
Wait, can I say something about that?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I wanted to say, I love this website, and I agree with what Emma said. It's like a go-to place if I'm like, I want a trusted resource, or I want to share a resource with people and they're like, I don't know where to start. There's so much out there. How do I pick one that's like good and not going to cause harm, or not like a really bad? But I hate that the word is tolerance, because I think the website is so much more and doing so much more than teaching us how to tolerate our students. And that's just my own biased opinion. I think the website is way more than teaching us and helping us teach our students how to tolerate individuals. But nonetheless, it's a good website.
Totally agree. Just like I said earlier, looking into the names, the words, I hadn't thought about that either, Zenovia. And another thing I feel like has really been beneficial in actually teaching the radical teachings that I want to teach, it would be using OSPI since time immemorial. It is actually a requirement for Washington State to be teaching, but it's not enforced. No one's checking it. There are no standards that we have to measure up to and give over to the district or things like that. But like I said earlier, we're integrating a lot of things. And so they have already created lessons as well, and which you could take in your own way, and you could use it directly off, but you could also modify it. I was doing science content literacy, so science, reading, writing, and throwing in some things about indigenous knowledge and using the stories that are in here. So we were learning about water. So being recognizing that we are on tribal land and explaining these things to children. And before we can even talk about these rivers and lakes that we are going to talk about, let's talk about how we got this land and the treaties that were broken, being real. And it's so funny to like play it out for students, because you'll do like your elementary school readers theater of like, this is what happened. And so one day a student had American flag, and I was like, I need that. Can I borrow that for my show today? And he's like, okay, fine, but can you give it at the end of the day? And so using whatever symbols you can to teach them the truth about what is continuing to happen, that the government is not following the treaties, and we are on stolen land, and we need to revitalize that culture and that knowledge that we weren't taught. And so looking at when you're building your own curriculum, or looking at your own curriculum that you're using for the school year, looking at their essential questions and how they align. They also have already written essential questions. They have standards that align with the Common Core standards. And as you can see, it's divided into elementary, K-3, and then Washington's the 4th, 5th, and everything's already there. You just have to make sure that you yourself are doing the work on knowing what you're teaching, and reaching out to tribal communities, tribal liaisons that are very willing to work with you if you go through the proper routes as well. You have to be respectful to sorry, got distracted, to the process of like it all. And I think that it's really important that we talk about Indigenous knowledge, as well as Black History Month. And these kids had no idea, and they'll never know unless we tell them the truth. That's really what it comes down to, teaching to the truth.
Okay, thank you so much. Those were such great resources. So I hope everybody got those. Also, just a reminder that this is a recorded session. So if you didn't get them, you can go back and get them once we post this on Facebook and also on the WEA website. So we have 2 last questions that we have planned, and then hopefully we might have a little bit of time to get to the couple questions that we have here in the Q&A. So actually, I want you all to answer this question like in one, please. Okay, so the question is basically what you do as an educator, as an elementary educator who is trying to educate from an abolitionist perspective. How do you do self-care? And then also, why is abolition important to elementary schools?
Gotta disrupt the systems. You gotta teach them the tools to critique and to make action and to build community, and always tie it back to who you are as a person, who you are in your community.
I like that you said abolish the system, because to be honest, I am starting to get like, I almost like hate when I say self-care, or when someone tells me self-care, because they say it in such a way that's almost like policing me. It's like, I think you just need self-care right now because you're getting really angry that we want to track our students into the school to prison pipeline. And I'm like, no, I need you to abolish the system. That would be my self-care. But also self-care is important in like, I don't know, like in an empowering way. I just don't like that, because I feel like it's utilized to like almost shove BIPOC educators down into a hole. Like, you just need self-care. That's why you're getting so mad right now, or that's why you're getting so angry or sad or, frustrated. What I do to take care of my individual, there you go, is I rely heavily on my friends and family. Like I surround myself with a community that empowers me and doesn't take away from me. And I think that's the thing is what has been really beautiful as growing up, just as my own individual, is I'm able to kind of like pick and choose what people I want to surround myself with. And I really try to surround myself with people that just give me life, and that I can give life back to it, because that also gives me life. And so I have a really amazing partner who has just been through thick and thin with me and is able to just kind of be my rock to tether me down. And then I have beautiful friends and a beautiful Ohana that just really make sure that I do it. I get it done and I'm whole afterwards.
I agree with you. Self-care is like, I don't know, it's a weird term. I don't love it, but in that mindset of how do I take care of myself and make sure I don't lose myself in this work, because I think as BIPOC educators, it's really hard for us to abolish the system, try and break down the system, because at the same time, you get that pushback and the system fights back against you. And we've also been fighting the system our entire lives to stay alive. So it can be really exhausting. Also, like I said earlier, I'm in my 6th year, and that is wild, because I just remember being like, okay, the world is telling me I'm going to quit this job in a certain amount of time. Like something's going to happen, that already sets you up for failure. Like, I'm not going to make it. So for me to like not lose myself in this work it's really connecting with like-minded educators and like-minded individuals. The networking I've been able to do because of this, and like the people I've met, like even in these webinars, I'm still meeting people and still like, oh my God, like, yes. And like people are still coming out and showing me that there's others out there doing it. And I'm not gonna lie, my therapist is also a good way for me to get that self-care and self-love. Like I'm a firm believer in mental health and taking care of that. And so it is wonderful to have a therapist and have, an ally and a partner in that work, and to also work through the trauma that I have within myself. Like if I don't figure that out, it makes it a lot harder to do the work in the classroom if I'm also bogged down with the trauma that I have. So low key, shout out to my therapist and all the work that she's been doing with me. But also, I'm going to be honest, like, it's my partner, it's my wife. She keeps me grounded. She tells me I gotta say no to a lot of things sometimes, because I be, as BIPOC individuals, we're down for anything. Like we'll sign up for all the stuff, but she'll be like, hey girl, when you go sleep, when you go eat, like I haven't seen, you should shower. And I'm like, dang it, you were so right. So like my wife keeps me grounded. She keeps me there. And she also respects me when I have to do the fight. Like she doesn't stop me from doing those things. And by no means does she keep me away from it, but she also makes sure that I don't lose myself in this work, because she knows it happens. And so I'm very thankful to have found a partner who A, puts up with me, B, enjoys being alone, because I feel like I'm like, I gotta be at school. There's a thing, we're late, the family night, I can't be home for 3 days. And she's like, oh, okay. And like, doesn't ask a lot of questions in that sense, but also is there for me and has my back when I'm like, I gotta do it. I gotta go. I gotta be there, and the kids need me. And she's like, I understand, but also reminds me to take care of myself, because if I'm not there and I'm not healthy mentally, spiritually, physically, I can't do this work. And I'm just so grateful she knows how important it is to me, and she didn't leave me because she put a ring on it. So I'm just so happy.
Love it. I love being a teacher, and I'm a teacher inside and outside the classroom, but reminding myself that I'm so much more. That's only a portion of what I am. I am a sister, I'm a daughter, I'm a cousin, I'm a partier. I like to have a good time. I like to read. I like to, I don't like to exercise, but I try with my friends sometimes. And so quarantine has helped me have a healthier relationship with my job, because I'm at my house and I can stop whenever I need to, and I don't have to like be cutting all these things and prepping and staying up late and trying to fit it all into this like 24 hours that doesn't feel enough. And now I can just say, no, I don't want to, or no, I don't have the capacity right now. I'm gonna journal because that's what I need right now. I'm gonna soak the sun outside, go to the lake, do things for me, because outside of a teacher, I am more than just a teacher. I love it, but I'm a human.
Can I just say that also, I didn't do any of this my first year teaching. Like, I don't know if Emma, like, she impressed me at how much she took care of herself and would be like, bye, no, I gotta go home. I didn't listen to any of those things, and it was really hard. So I hope people listen to this and first year educators take that mindset that Emma had, because there were definite times where she was like, no, I'm gonna go see a friend, I'm gonna go take care. And I was like, damn, yeah, me too, forget this, it's gonna be here tomorrow. Like, and I would also leave. And then there were also times where I'd be like, Emma, leave, get out of the building. Like, nothing you do right now is gonna make it, just go home. Like, you gotta go home and eat dinner, you gotta go to sleep, and like, you have to be there for each other. Yeah, no, you have to be there for each other. There were a few times where I was like, Emma, I think you need to go to the doctor. I think you're sick. And she was like, no, I'm fine. And it was like, no, you have to take care of yourself, because if you don't, the work is still, we want to do this work, but we're so good as educators of ignoring ourselves and putting everyone in front of us. And that is fine for a while, but that's why we have burnout as BIPOC educators, is because we're not only trying to fight the system in our classroom, but we're literally fighting the system that is our lives. And it's exhausting when you don't get that support. So I'm thankful to see young educators coming up and hearing that message, being like, all right, I'm gonna take a break, I'm gonna do me, because that's important, because we've lost a lot who weren't able to do that and who didn't get that message and didn't get that support. So I'm thankful that Emma caught on real quick.
Different breed.
Okay, everybody. I mean, if you look at the time right now, according to white supremacy, we're supposed to be done. Okay. So there are a couple questions in the Q&A, but I also just want to tell everybody, we respect your time. We said the cutoff time was going to be 8 o'clock. So if you do have to take care or go, please take care. I do want to just honestly thank my panelists, because actually you're not my panelist, you're our panelist. I don't own you. I'm so sorry. I take it right back. I'm so grateful for all of you. This is our last session that we're doing for the mini series, and it's been one of my favorite sessions so far, not gonna lie. And I'm just in such gratitude for each of you for sharing your expertise. Also, special shout out to Emma, who was just finishing her first year of teaching, just like Zenovia was saying. There is something to be said about a first year educator who is doing the work that you're doing right now, Emma. And I mean,
yes,
it's just wild. Woo! It's just wild. It's literally just wild. And I'm just so glad you're here today. I don't think you and I have ever met in person, but once COVID is done, I hope to meet you in person and, maybe go to the happy hour. And because I like to okay, I like to
Okay.
So, okay, everybody, thank you so much for joining us. There's going to be more of this to come, because these mini-series sessions have been such a wild success, and it's obviously what our members are wanting. So thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you. Mucho respeto. Goodbye. Oh yeah, so panelists, stay on.
Oh, I was just
about to log off.
So don't leave. Panelists, stay on. Everybody else goes away. We love you so much, though.
Yeah, I was gonna say I have like a really nice bowl of Kahlua pig and rice waiting for me, but I guess I can reheat it. I'm just kidding.
I had some for lunch. Oh, it was so good.
Wait, where did you go? Did you go to Ohana Kitchen?
We went to L&L.
Oh, okay. I'll take you to the place we go to.
Wait.